The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect the policies and the position of Now You Know.
Good evening and welcome to Viewpoint. Together with experts and newsmakers, we make sense of the week's biggest issues and stories. I'm Barnaby Lo. In tonight's conversation,
President Rodrigo Duterte opened his national address last week with a tirade against Vice President Leni Robredo. Not the first time, but this time around, social media users and a number of journalists called him out for false accusations almost instantaneously. Duterte said Robredo was behind a hashtag questioning his whereabouts when flood inundated the Cagayan region, but she never did. This comes on the heels of major US networks cutting away from the live broadcast of Donald Trump as he was delivering a speech. News anchors fact-checked the US president about the legitimacy of Joe Biden's win as he was still speaking. With parallels being drawn between Trump and Duterte, there's now a raging debate in the Philippines as to how local reporters should cover live events and stories involving public officials in general in this age of disinformation.
and joining us in this discussion is the chair of the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines, Nonoy Espina. Good evening, Noy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for joining. Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
As well as Rappler's Malacanang reporter Pia Ranada. Good evening, Pia. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone, and good evening.
All right. Again, thank you so much to both of you for joining us on a Tuesday evening. Sinabayan natin yung mga evening newscasts sa TV. So I hope people are watching and listening because I think this is a very important discussion, not just for our industry, but as well as for the general Filipino public. All right. I'm going to start with last week. I think it was not exactly a week ago, but six days ago, was it? November 17th. My math is off, but it was on November 17th when President Duterte delivered his weekly national address, and then he opened with a 20-minute, if I'm not mistaken, tirade against Vice President Leni Robredo. Of course, among the three of us, Pia, you're the Malacanang reporter. So obviously, it's your responsibility to report on President Duterte. So if I may ask you the first question, when you were listening, because I mean, it's not really the first time that President Duterte attacked Vice President Leni Robredo, and in fact, opposition figures. And it's also not his first time to make a tirade out of his public speech. But what was racing through your mind then?
I was thinking, bakit niya sinasabi ito sa pagbungad pa lang ng speech niya? Because one thing that we have to note in these speeches, and it's something that a lot of people don't actually keep in mind all the time, is that these speeches are actually heavily edited. So what we see being live streamed on Facebook or in television is what Malacanang wants us to see. So it's not the entire meeting, but it's parts of the meeting that Duterte or his aides think that deserve to be aired to the public. So the fact that they chose to air this part, and it was the very first thing they aired, it sent me a message that, hey, this is different. This is a tirade that is a bit more elevated. It's a much angrier president than I've seen him talking about Vice President Leni Robredo. And the fact that it was top of his mind, I mean, I'm thinking that the sequence probably of the editing is because the president actually mentioned Robredo. Also, medyo at the start siguro of the meeting. That's why they just, opened with that, because that's one of the things that he raised first. So that was already a big red flag to me. And I knew as he just started speaking for a long time, like I thought he would wrap up maybe in a minute. Like maybe he would just tease, or his usual insult to Vice President Lenny would be done in maybe 2 minutes or something. But when it breached the 10-minute mark, and he started saying that she was lying, and that this is going to be her nightmare if she runs in 2022, that already gave me the idea that, oh, this is a tirade that we can't just ignore, because a lot of media would just, like, okay, it's another tirade. They won't tweet it, or they'll tweet it, but it will be a cursory tweet, not much
Mm.
emphasis on it. But the moment I heard that he was already starting to make these baseless claims, I knew that fact checks were necessary, and people were tuning in also had to be reminded that, what the president is saying may not be in fact truthful.
Kasi iba yung ano, no? Iba yung tirade lang, iba yung attack lang, iba yung baseless claims, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kasi
And
if
you
it's
could,
coming from the president's mouth, people will say, oh, it's gospel truth, especially his supporters, diba?
yeah. But at that time, you already knew that a lot of the things that he was saying were baseless. I mean, how were you fact checking in your mind?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind was what in his statement is blatantly false. And then I identified that when he was saying that walang ginawa si Lenny kundi magtawag-tawag. That was blatantly false, because we see naman the photos, the videos, the interviews, and we see that the vice president's office is really moving in disaster response. So that was one lie. So ako, in my mind, I was just like, what is he saying? What is truthful and what is just an insult? And that allowed me to kind of make a tally in my mind that, oh, it has to be called out, and I can
Mm.
defend my tweet. If I say lie, I know which lie I mean. So I think it's important to make sure that your statement, your tweet, diba? Even if you're live tweeting, it has to be based on something, so that syempre people won't question it and won't think that you yourself are spreading false information. So yun, that was
Stock
one.
knowledge siya.
Yeah,
Stock knowledge siya. I mean, you didn't
stock
have to
knowledge.
Google. Eh, ang bilis eh. That's my question here eh. When you're live tweeting and he's making a speech, eh, kailangan mo habulin, di ba, yung mga sinasabi niya. So, yung fact check na yun is just in your head. Am I
Yes.
right?
Kasi meron naman talagang obviously false, right? Like, you don't even
Okay.
really need to have an in-depth knowledge of politics in the Philippines to know that the vice president is doing something naman, and it's false to say that she's not.
Okay. And yung nasaan ng Pangulo, when he
Ah,
said that she was behind that, you knew that that wasn't true.
yes, but I did want to make sure, so I Googled just, just quickly, very quickly, Lenny Robredo, hashtag nasa ng Pangulo, walang lumabas. And it also helped that the night before, I actually wrote a story about Harry Roque making the same claim. So we had to get the side of Barry Gutierrez, the Liberal Party spokesman, and he
Mm.
already debunked it from the day before pa, or actually days before, that no,
Okay.
the hashtag nasaan ang Pangulo didn't come from the Liberal Party at least. But obviously the fact check was, did Lenny Robredo say it? So that's what I just had to quickly Google.
Okay. So some things you have in your mind, you're sure. Some things you actually have to search and Google.
Yeah. And then yung aming Lenny, the vice presidential beat reporter, Mara Cepeda, was also quick to fact check. Kasi it's already stock knowledge for her. She can reach the spokesman of Vice President Lenny. And she tweeted also alongside me. So we were like tweeting in parallel of each other during the speech of the president.
Okay, because you know in the US they have like a whole team of fact checkers when they're broadcasting live, like CNN and even the New York Times. They have like a whole office of fact checkers. Do you have that?
We have that, especially for big coverage of na speeches of the president, like SONA.
Mm.
That's an event that you can definitely count on Rappler, the Rappler team, to have like this. The whole team is watching, and we're all
Yeah.
divided into like who will tackle which issues he mentions, who will fact check. But kasi for the weekly remarks of the president, but this is a weekly thing, his messages to the nation. Ano eh, syempre these are like graveyard shift, no one's awake. I'm the only one awake most of the time, and my editor. So it's really just me a lot of the times, and the editor. And then kung may gising na reporter at that time, tutulong siya. But yeah, it's
Oh,
really onti lang
must
kami usually.
I mean, sorry, Noya. I just had one final question for Pia, and then I'll go to you. But I mean, it must have been tough. It must not have been an easy decision to live tweet and then say, you know, and then contextualize and say outright, that's not true. What the president is saying is not true, and especially in the context of what has happened to you. I mean, is was there no fear factor?
It was actually pretty, I wouldn't say easy, but more of commonsensical for me. Kasi, parang it would be harder for me to just tweet what he was saying without any context. It would be harder for me kasi I would feel like I'm like part of the propaganda maybe, or helping spread certain falsehoods. And diba, as a journalist, you kind of shudder from that prospect of you pa being the one helping to spread disinformation. So it's not that it was easy. It was more of maybe a muscle that I've trained myself to develop, especially since I've been covering this president since 2015.
Okay, so no fear at all of, maybe you were thinking, and I'm probably assuming too much here, but maybe you were thinking, baka hindi na ako makabalik sa Malacanang ever, right? Kasi let's give our audience the context. You were banned from Malacanang before this whole pandemic happened.
Yes. But I guess it's just been kind of a fact in my life already that it's not that prominent a reality that it affects everything I do. Like
Mhm.
for me, it's still far and foremost my number one job talaga is to cover the president. And I have these limitations, but I'll work with it and I'll do my best. And that's what I guess keeps me busy. And I don't really dwell on the ban. Although of course we still are fighting to lift the ban because it's still unjust, and it's still our right as press to have access to information that will allow us to do our jobs better.
Okay, Chair Noy, are you there? Yes, you're there. Okay. I want to ask you. Obviously, you're not a Malacanang reporter. I also am not a Malacanang reporter, and we were observers during that night. But we're also journalists, right? What was your observation then about how reporters were handling reporting of that speech? I mean, we're talking about how Pia handled her reporting, but there were a number of journalists live tweeting. What was your assessment? Were there more journalists who did what Pia did, or were there more reporters who kind of, just like live tweeted what the president said without any context?
I guess the majority were just putting it out there without any context, and it's not that it's a bad thing, because like uh, like I was saying when they were criticizing one reporter, he said, "Look, notes are notes. Notes are just notes. It's the story that carry the context." But having said that, mm, it's also kind of, well, we know how social media is accepted by people, that usually the first thing they see is the first thing they believe. And if you just put it out there without context, it can be dangerous also, because people tend to lap it up and say that's it. And when they see your story and you put in context and everything, they'll say you're twisting the facts. But I guess that's a risk we all have to live with. But having I do admire what Rappler reporters did, no? And it got the context right from the get go, and that's something I think we should be seeing more of.
I guess ito yung tanong eh. Reporting ba yung live tweeting? Ito kasi yung, I think this is where the confusion happens. Kasi people now expect reporters to contextualize when they're live tweeting, but that's not really the story that they come out with. I mean, they're gonna come out with a full story right after they've live tweeted all of the speech. So, kaya lang, ang nangyayari, ang nagiging highlight, yung live tweet, because everything is just so fast right now. So, I mean, what is your view of this, Noy?
Well, actually, ako personally, I don't even think we should be streaming you know, those so-called addresses to the nation, which aren't even addresses. They're just tape recorded. They're canned sessions that I don't know. especially when it's the president speaking, it doesn't really carry much value because everything
I'm
that's
sorry.
important is, you know,
What do you mean the president speaking doesn't carry much value?
I mean, when he goes in his rants, I mean, you know, what's the value in those rants anyway? And we keep on digesting them, and he ends the rants end up actually kind of diverting attention from the important issues and concerns at hand. Like you know, especially like when they meet on the vaccine and he keeps on spouting all these lies about the vaccines ready. We're getting you know. So it's really crazy that the head of state actually lies on TV. You know, people
So,
actually believe him. I think we
so
should
should
just do away with that.
should reporters not even live tweet for you?
Well, live tweeting, I guess, does have value of its own, but not as reportage. Just to keep just to keep you uh, apprised of the minute by minute happenings. But that's it. And
But I
I think
mean,
it
I
should
guess
come
it's
with a
not.
caveat.
Yeah, but it's not up to the reporter to perceive the live tweet as just a live tweet or as a reportage. It really is up to the audience, right?
And I guess newsrooms should always newsrooms should also start rethinking how we do this because if newsrooms are very clear about when you live tweet, let's put some context into it, let's put more people into it so we can fact check on the fly, then that would be great. Otherwise, we're not stenographers. We're not supposed to be stenographers. We're not supposed to be just shooting it off without background or context or anything. So I think that's where the danger lies. When people
Pia,
believe the
what's
tweet, it's the story.
yeah, yeah. Pia, what's your take on this? Because Rappler lives online. I mean, you don't have a TV station, you don't have a paper version, so you live online and you've lived on social media for such a long time. I mean, it really is your whole ecosystem. So, I mean, what's your take on this? Kasi Rappler iba yung Rappler sa ibang media outlets.
Well, I think medyo artificial yung idea that live tweeting is not your report and your report is your report. I think that delineation is true for the media. Like we see it that way because we see it as a very obvious parang difference in our output. But for the audience, 'di ba? When they see a reporter tweet, that tweet is their report in effect. Because you're tweeting as a reporter and you're also tweeting on a newsworthy event. So for me, that's the reason why example yung I have a most reporters have a dedicated Twitter account, 'di ba? Like you have a personal Twitter account, then you have a reporter Twitter account because you recognize that Twitter account is really just for your reporting. And when you tweet on that account, 'di ba, it's usually not your opinions, but um, it's your news, like what you reported that day or your coverage for the day. So you also take the extra effort to make sure na tama yung figures mo, 'di ba? Ako, I always have to issue an erratum if my tweet is wrong, even a wrong spelling or wrong figures. So I think that we could still be careful about what we tweet and treat it as reporting. But I guess what si Sir Noynoy was saying was that do we just live tweet without context and as if we're just echoing, what the official is saying? And I think that's where reporters have to draw the line that precisely because their tweet is their report, their tweet has to be just as accurate, factual, and rigorous as a real report.
You don't think it's commentary because may mga nagsasabi na when you do that, when you're not quoting your sources verbatim and then you're already judging, is it true what he's saying, is it not true what he's saying? Parang ang sabi nila, who are we daw to judge what is true? So kumbaga ito kasi yung siguro ito na yung question ng balance the traditional type of journalism where you have he said, she said, and then you have the audience judge for themselves who is telling the truth?
I think
I mean, yeah.
I think that context isn't editorializing because context is part of the truth, and in fact, it will enrich your the truth that you are being told. Because if you only know, for example, Duterte's drug list and my list done of names, 'di ba? Do you report just that, or the added context that the lists that Duterte previously put out were full of errors and
Mm.
inaccuracies and may not have been vetted properly? So, 'di ba? Parang would you be giving your audience like just the list or the list and that context? Because I think, and in rap we think that to give them to serve your audience well and best is you have to give the full picture, and the context is part of the full picture, and you'll never
Mm.
really understand the issue if you don't understand the bigger picture and the underlying context and the motivations of people behind it and why they're doing it and the timing. Parang all of these things give the audience and news readers a better understanding of the world around them, and thus
Mm.
more basis for making sound decisions that affect their lives.
Oh, so to the point where you have to say outright, that's a lie. That's not
Yes,
true.
because lies naman, ano eh, we're not talking about um subjective lies. You know what I mean? Like it's not like, parang my opinion. It's like the sky is blue, right? I mean, you just look out the window and you can see that it's blue. So the truth is something that everyone should be able to agree with. It's something that you can fact check me, I can fact check you, and we'll all arrive at the same conclusion. So things like Vice President Leni Robredo using the hashtag nasaan ang Pangulo, that's an objective truth. You can check that. You can look at her Twitter account, see if she used that hashtag, and find a conclusion that no, she in fact did not use that hashtag. And that truth will not change whether or not you're pro Duterte or anti Duterte.
But Chair Noy, what about truth by association? Because Secretary Harry Roque did that. He said, "Oh, okay, maybe Vice President Leni Robredo did not look for President Duterte, but her daughters did, or her spokesperson did."
Then you're creating a totally different reality, and that's a lie. I mean, you cannot associate the daughter's tweets with the vice president looking for the president. That's stretching things too far, and I think they should be called out right away on that. Even the C-130 comments, we all know
Hmm.
they weren't true, and so every time they do that, they should be called out on that. And
Okay,
a lie is a lie, and the only way to counter a lie is with the facts.
okay,
We have to
maybe
do that. It's part of our
yeah,
job.
maybe let's go back to basics for a second then and try to educate our viewers. Noy, what is balance in journalism? What is fairness, objectivity? What are fairness, objectivity, and balance in journalism? Because I think these are so basic, but a lot of people don't really understand them.
Well, balance balance is basically trying to get all sides to comment and getting the facts right. But in the end, whatever they say and whatever you think, the facts should be the facts should be the primordial content of your story.
Mm.
I mean, we're all of us have our own preconception. All of us have our own biases, but everything should be dictated by what facts are available. Beyond that, everything is fluff, really.
Okay. So, Pia, ikaw ba, when you're reporting, do you recognize that you have your own biases? Siyempre, growing up, you have your own influences, di ba? Sabi nila, lalabas at lalabas daw yung bias ng isang reporter. Do you subscribe to that?
I think that's why
And is
you
that
judge.
okay? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why you judge objectivity by the report, not the reporter, because reporters as human beings are always going to be subjective because we are people. We have our own viewpoints, 'di ba? Hinubog tayo ng ating experiences, our memories, so we can never be like objective in that sense. But our reports can be objective. How? Because there are a set of a playbook, a guidebook that journalists follow to make sure that their reports are fair and accurate and objective. And that's always, like Caesar Noynoy said, getting the both sides of the story, making sure that you get the context right, and that you ensure that the facts you report come from primary sources or credible sources. So if you just follow that rule book, no matter what biases you have, no matter what experiences you've had in the past that might shape your politics, you can prevent your report from being inaccurate, from being flighty or subjective. Because at the end of the day, yun nga, journalism is also a craft, and there are rules that you go by, and the rules are precisely there to ensure that you report well. And I think naman, for the most part, diba, reporters follow this rule and stick to the fairness principle that we all have to abide by.
Do you think it's a problem na syempre reporters are on social media a lot? So meron perception na or parang napaghahalo siguro ng mga audiences yung work mo tsaka yung social media persona mo. And so I mean, where is that line that you can't cross between your reportage and commentary when you're doing journalism, but you're also on social media and you are voicing out your opinions sometimes. And as you said, you can have two accounts. One is for work and one is for personal.
Well, I guess it would be up to individual journalists to assess kung ano yung level nila of, di ba, how opinionated they want to be on Twitter. Kasi, iba't ibang stomachs yan for that. Like, there are some reporters I know who are really all out, di ba, they even curse online and on their Twitter accounts. And for them, that they think that, di ba, that's their freedom of expression. They're saying naman that they have always a disclaimer sa Twitter account nila na the opinions here are not the opinions of their outlet. So I think that for me that's already enough kasi they already acknowledge naman that. And ako personally though, I really treat my Twitter account as just for work. Primarily because it's really just a tool for me to do my work. And if I have a comment on an article that could be maybe extreme or emotional, then it's still, I don't go all the way to like cursing anyone. So
So it's
it's
a
really up
personal
to
choice.
individual.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a personal choice. And I think naman that people on Twitter have to realize also that these are Twitter accounts of people, and people will always want to express certain things.
Noy, what's your take on this?
I agree. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I know really, really great reporters who cuss online like like nothing, but they're really great journalists. They're good journalists, and their their personal opinions have never served to detract from their excellent reporting. And I think people should realize that. I agree with Pia. Like a personal account is a personal account, unless of course the company wants you to have a separate account for work. Then they set it up for you.
Okay. So meron mga companies, may mga media companies na may social media guidelines, ano? And that's okay?
Yeah, to an extent, that's okay. Pero if I'll draw the line really on social media guidelines that actually tell them what not to say. Or mahirap din yun. I mean, you're infringing on personal rights, and whether you're a journalist or not, personal rights are a different area altogether. They have nothing to do with our job.
I might be going out on a limb here, pero I feel like kasi parang naging enemy of the state tayo eh. When did that happen kaya? How did that happen kaya?
Well, the president
Sige,
set the
go.
tone already. Kasi nung parang a few days before his inauguration, that was when he uttered yung kanyang infamous remark that journalists are
Not exempt
not exempt from assassination.
from assassination. Yeah.
Tapos yung paggamit ng prostitutes, 'di ba? Pinauso yun ng mga followers niya online. So it really started, I think, really even before his presidency started.
Kumbaga, na propaganda tayo.
Oo.
Is that what happened, Noy?
Unfortunately.
Well, actually, this isn't the first administration to call us enemies of the state. I remember way back panahon ni Gloria, 2005, there was this ESAF PowerPoint called Knowing the Enemy, where they listed down all the enemies of the state, and among them were CBCP, NUJP, PCIJ, and the usual suspects. So, critical faculties have never been popular with governments. Pero I do agree that this government is the one that has really done the most to curb criticism and dissent, to the
Yeah.
extent of actually labeling all of us enemies of the state when we say they're
Yeah.
wrong, which is basically our job. We should be watching them and calling them out.
Yeah. I mean, critical media, of course, has never been popular with governments, but I think, and I might be wrong, but never with ordinary people. And now, a lot of ordinary people see us as the enemies of the state. How can we change this?
Okay. Um, I guess we're all aware that for the longest time, our trust in media has been going down, and that's not just the Philippines. It's worldwide, and I think that a lot of that has to do also with media basically distancing ourselves from our audiences. A lot of
Mm.
times, we tend to talk down to people, forgetting that we should be part of the people, and
Mm.
so you know, people will run to us for help because we really are, parang court of last resort tayo madalas. They will come to us for help, ask for help, pero when things happen, parang, yan, kaya naman nila yan. So, I think that's sad. And I think we should do more to reconnect with our audiences. To reconnect with
Pero,
our audiences.
yeah, pero
Mayabang din
Pia,
tayo.
pero Pia, wala bang kinalaman sa changing nature of journalism that maybe people want us to stick with traditional norms of journalism? But as you said, now we see the need to call out these lies outright when we see them, that they're obviously false statements, that they're so quickly verifiable.
Siguro yung problem now, I think the main difference with this phenomenon or this current situation we're in is social media. Kasi yung environment of the internet where people are so easily manipulated by viral headlines and emotional sounding Facebook posts and rants by certain political people. We know that on social media it's really anger and hate that becomes viral, and things like sober reporting, accurate reporting, in-depth reporting on a certain important issue, hindi siya nagiging viral. So, yung nangyayari is, stand out are the influencers who mimic or who echo the sentiments of people, and they're the
Mm.
ones who are now becoming trustworthy in their people are turning to these peddlers of information, or yung mga people who want to thrive on hate and other, 'di ba, parang extreme emotions. So we're nasa sideline yung media, and at the same time this same machine that thrives on hate is also being deployed against media, 'di ba? There's a narrative that we can't be trusted because we are tools of the oligarchy. So the fact that this kind of propaganda is able to spread like wildfire so fast because of social media, I don't think media has ever been able to keep up with this, and until now we can't figure out how to fix this or how to respond to this narrative in a good or effective manner. And I think it's also because media in the Philippines is not united. We're watak-watak tayo. Parang we can't get our act together. We're blinded by competition, and siguro also concerns that can we survive this administration, and the people who fund our organizations, diba, the managers, the big corporate bosses who, diba, are controlling most of the major media outlets here, they're also scared for their other businesses. So ang dami-daming factors that I think have led to this state of affairs, and I think we can do better.
Oh, I think Noy, Pia is talking about the chilling effect. Do you still see that? Given what happened last week, where we saw a number, maybe not all, but we did see a number of reporters call out those false statements outright on Twitter.
Well, yeah. I think that's a good thing, and I hope we can sustain that. And but like Pia said, in the end, it all depends on are the gatekeepers ready to absorb that pressure and ready to join us in calling them out. And of course, the owners. We have the owners to contend with. Like I said, madalas napag-uusapan kasi madalas yung when it comes to ethics, napag-uusapan ng individual journalist. But we should also look at the bigger picture and consider the ethics of ownership and the ethics of media management.
So
Kasi
meron pa
dun
rin
din naman,
chilling effect for you
Yes, there is. There is. In
Kasi,
fact,
with the
well,
closure of ABS-CBN and with,
yeah,
the administration harassing Maria Ressa and the rest of Rappler, I mean, there must be
meron
some
talaga.
effect.
In fact, hindi na hindi na hihinto yung mga reports na madalas na yung pinapatay yung mga storya, or stories just get set aside, and well, columnists get bumped off. So meron talaga. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not even a chilling effect. Sometimes it's really just politics.
How about the issue of safety? I mean, we keep talking about the issue of press freedom, chilling effect, how reporters are supposed to be reporting, but then in smaller towns, all these issues are even beyond them. And we just commemorated the anniversary of Maguindanao massacre yesterday, and you're saying it's not a closed case.
No, it's not. It's not a closed case. I mean, the convictions are under appeal. 76 suspects are still at large. They haven't been tried. And like Nena said, they had a second wave of cases, but only 8 people were indicted, 40 others were cleared. So this is far from over, really. And
Yeah. Do you think that's a much bigger issue, or do you think that press freedom in the context of where we are right now is a much bigger issue?
well, in the first place, the Ampatuan massacre was not exclusively a press freedom issue. It just happened to be the single deadliest attack on media, but it was basically an issue of you know of disrupting the democratic process, violently disrupting the democratic process. It was a question of really it was electoral violence at its worst, no? And I think we should also not forget that, no? It was more than just journalists being killed. It was basically one party resorting to violence to stop another party from running. And in the context of I guess that's the way Philippine politics works. Hindi lang ganun kabayolente. Alam mo yun, yung kaso dito, kaso doon. And press freedom is just one of the freedoms that are under threat. No? Although I will also say that it's one of the more, primary freedoms that we should defend. Otherwise, pag walang press freedom, wala na talaga. No? Because only uninformed people are empowered. You take away
Yeah.
their access to information, wala na.
Pia, what do
Wala
you
na
think
tayo.
about what U.S. network did when they cut off Trump mid-speech? I think that was maybe a couple of days after the U.S. election. I mean, people here were saying, sana all. Di ba? People were, I don't know if inspired would be the word, but, people were saying, sana pwede rin natin gawin dito yon. Pero ako, I mean, I saw an opportunity for our media networks to do that last week. And siguro hindi lang yung lies, but the part where the president was being so misogynistic. But do you think that it's possible for our media outlets to do that here?
I'm not sure because the president's speeches, parang while he does make those insults, there are also newsrooms, of course, who see the value in streaming those meetings because it's not just Duterte speaking. It's also other officials. It's an update on the pandemic, which is what's foremost on people's mind. It's highly newsworthy. And parang it's up to, I guess, individual newsrooms do have to weigh the value of the pandemic updates versus what you can expect from Duterte that are obviously that are more often than not, diba, parang tirades that have no basis or maraming mga misogynist remarks, rape jokes, etc. But yung dun sa US media, I think that it is inspiring and it's something that it happened because I believe it happened because the US media saw what was at stake. It wasn't just the lies of coming from a person, but lies that could potentially destroy their democracy because it was putting basically parang questioning the credibility of their own elections. So I remember a period of time, I think this was within the Duterte presidency when some media got together and there was a statement where we were trying to be unified in not publishing the drug lists of the president. And Rappler followed that. We stopped publishing the names of in the drug lists, and instead just said, "Oh, there were 13 mayors, there were two vice governors, etc." So, knowing that, acknowledging the fact that these names, diba, they haven't been tried yet by any court, so they're not yet guilty beyond reasonable doubt. And
Yeah.
publishing their names would be basically trying them and calling them guilty before the people. So, but unfortunately, not all media outlets did that. So I think that's where you can see na talagang iba-iba yung priorities ng newsrooms and iba-iba rin yung uh,
Still,
their
still part of the
decision.
chilling effect. Still part of
Yes,
the,
I
the
think so.
chilling
I think
effect.
so. But also
Yeah.
probably debate that the names themselves are newsworthy and I don't know what went on in those newsrooms, but I'm just thinking that maybe that was the reason.
But you said that you think that the U.S. networks did that because they saw that their democracy was at stake. So wala pa tayo sa point na ganun. Is that what you're saying?
I think matagal na tayo nasa point na ganun in a way because little chips in our democracy, 'di ba? Bit by bit, before you know it, it's gone. So I think
Mm.
we should be jealous of our freedoms always, and any attack on it, no matter how seemingly small, we should always be vigilant against.
Okay, Noy, do you want to see our media networks cut away from President Duterte's speech, and maybe not just President Duterte, but anyone giving a live public address and spewing false statements?
Well, if it's a live event, that would be very hard to do. No, pero I would probably advocate for a delay. You know, a delay to just catch the blips and maybe for fact checking also, especially sa broadcast and live. You know, but I strongly believe that this recorded addresses to the nation. In fact, the title pa lang misleading na eh. So if we shouldn't be live streamed. They're not first, they're not addresses to the nation. And second, we can always monitor them and report on them. Let government media handle that. We can just report. It doesn't have to be streamed live and with all the added baggage of you know. I think we don't deserve that anymore. We don't deserve that anymore. Our people
Pwede ba
getting
yon? Pwede ba yon, Pia? Do you think that's possible that we don't live stream all of his speeches and just choose which ones are newsworthy?
Yeah, I think that's possible because there are newsrooms, including Rappler, where we decide,
Mm.
okay, this is too much. It's already 12 a.m. It's parang already not considerate of the government to delay it so long and for what. So parang may ganung mga discussions na rin na perhaps it's best to, if we're going to live stream something like the sauna, for example, which Rappler does, but everybody live streams the sauna. We do commentary beside it. We fact check live when we cover it. So there are these decisions where if you do choose to live stream unofficial, knowing that they will, diba, say certain things, spurious things, then your job is really to fact check live as well.
Yeah, mahirap mag-fact check live when you really don't have enough people to fact check. Hindi naman lahat yung sobrang obvious na false, diba? Like you said, Pia, you're the only one awake at 12 midnight for Rappler, right? I mean, Noy, what do you think?
Well, I think it's still the call of the newsrooms. Tama yung sabi ni Pia. Newsrooms should, put their acts together, should discuss this more and decide on the parameters that they should, tolerate. We can't.
Mm.
I think it's a disservice to our people to continue showing these things, which only muddle the important issues that we should be, talking about. Madalas nauuwi doon na focus sa pagmumura niya, sa misogyny niya. And then we lose sight of the important matter concerns.
Mm.
Like,
Can you take us through, Pia, can you take us through the vetting process in your newsroom? Because you took us through your mind already, how you're vetting in your mind and, how you're personally Googling and fact checking. But what really happens in the newsroom? How do you vet these things? And what happens when someone makes a mistake?
Well, for Rappler at least, we have a fact-checking team, a dedicated fact-checking team. It's a small unit that basically receives complaints of fake news through our various channels. So pag may complaint kami from a netizen na, "Oy, Rappler, we saw this headline, is it true or not?" Then the fact checker will contact the reporter who is covering the beat, which that fake news is mentioning. For example, if it's Malacanang beat, I will be the one contacted by the fact checker. And then ako
Mm,
yung magtatanong ng true or false question dun sa officials in my beat.
mm,
So I will ask, for example, Presidential Spokesman Harry Roque, "Sir, is this headline true?" etc. So we get it from the official sources, but there are also obviously ways na it will need more digging. Like you will need the fact checker will need to go through certain documents, etc. Those will take time. And as you said, diba, hindi minsan imposible i-live fact check yung isang very complicated lie. So ganun talaga, there will be a delay, and it's just because we are sabi nga ng mga fact checkers, it's so easy to lie, it takes a second to lie, but it could take days to tell the truth because nga we want to be accurate, we want to be rigorous in our reporting.
unfortunately, Noy, are you satisfied as an observer? You know, at NUJP, I think you have a bird's eye view of how our media outlets do this, and Pia just walked us through how Rappler does it. But obviously, maybe not obviously, but other media outlets probably do it differently. Are you satisfied with the way our media outlets vet these facts?
Generally, as far as getting the facts, okay naman. I mean, we generally get it right naman. No? Yun nga, I just wish there was more context really and more background. Especially when it comes to, it's sometimes kind of frustrating how we fail to provide more context and background, especially online. Updates are posted as separate stories when you could just do one wrap that will explain everything and make it
Mm.
clearer for your audience. I used to be an editor, so that's the way I work. No, okay lang, you post updates, but in the end, you should have the wrap. And sometimes the wrap is lost, and especially online. And yun, background and context, I think are kind of lacking in reportage. Ever since pa naman may kakulangan talaga doon. I wish we could step up the game din. We could step up our game kasi we're missing, our audiences really are missing a lot.
In that sense, then, with social media around, with live tweeting, kind of, I would say actually
Especially
it's
with
kind of a requirement nowadays. Mas mahirap. A last question for both of you, actually. Is it harder to be a journalist nowadays?
I've never been a journalist except now. So I wouldn't know. Baka
Pinoy.
si Sir
Okay.
Nonoy mas may answer dyan.
Sige.
wow, sige. Voice of experience, ganun. No, actually, I actually think, there are some challenges that need to be hurdled. No? Tech- Technology is really one hurdle that we need to, get a better grasp on, especially social media. No? I actually, was on the front end of online journal, so and seeing it evolve, talagang it gets, parang I get the feeling sometimes na instead of clarity, we're getting more muddy. No? So I think newsrooms and individual journalists, news managers should, come together and talk about the challenges that we're facing and how to best address them. Because in the end, I still advocate that journalism is nothing if not for our audiences. This is for them. It's not for us naman. Eh. If we cannot communicate, if we cannot inform them adequately, then we're really failing at our jobs.
So I guess hindi inabutan ni Pia yung time na walang social media.
Hindi.
Oh my goodness.
Sigurado hindi niya nabutan yung facts.
Wow.
Dahil na Rappler, online lang kami.
Wow. So inabutan ko pa yon. Man.
Kakaingit, ano?
Yes, Pia, for your information, dati walang social media. And so we had much more time to vet lies
Yeah.
and facts.
Parang yung deadline nyo, 4 p.m., ganun, di ba?
Oh, yeah.
Ngayon,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
ASAP yung deadline.
Yeah, I
And,
know.
and before I
Walang
was,
deadline every second. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
yeah, before I was working for a documentary program, so I had actually days. I had days to
Wow.
do.
The
Yeah, I had
luxury.
days to do my research, diba? The luxury of it. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, on that note, then, thank you so much to both of you. That's all the time that we have for this week. Thank you so much to our audiences on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. And I hope that we have enlightened you with the way journalism works and the way journalism works in this era of social media and I would say disinformation. My name is Barnaby Lo. Do catch us on Viewpoint on Now You Know regularly every Saturday at 6